first-time attendee at an Architox lecture. If you could clap. Woo! All right, welcome. Yay. And if you are sitting there and you haven't clapped yet, then please clap. All right. That's it. We're all here. So thank you again for being here tonight. We encourage you to visit architox.org to learn more about the upcoming lectures and all that we're doing. After last week's lecture, somebody came up to me and said, you know, Architox is like my brain coming out of hibernation. And I really got that. It's sort of this opportunity to get our creative juices going. Hearing last week, Monica and Stephen talk about their projects, the little patio and the cool street sign design that they did. It's just awesome stuff. So that's what I love about Architox. It's just a chance to really connect with others and enjoy creativity to the utmost. I mentioned this last week, and I need to make another plug because not only do you not want to miss next Thursday's event, but we need you here. Next Thursday is the third Thursday Building Community event. It's networking, music, food, drinks. It's a collaboration with the young contemporaries of the Portland Museum of Art. And it also includes an encore presentation of Scott Simon's 6-minute and 40-second Pachaka talk. So it will be a chance for everybody who attends to talk with each other and discuss how we can improve the fabric of Portland's architecture. So this conversation is so important. This is the time, this is the city, and it's a great chance to kick some serious architecture ass. I mentioned this last week as well, but we are actively recruiting board members, so please approach any of us with a green pin if you're interested, if you're passionate, and you don't mind hard work and you want to have fun. Okay, so let's get here for what you're really here for. This would not be possible, this amazing lecture series, without the tremendous support of our sponsors. First and foremost, our underwriter since 2001, Marvin Window and Design, in collaboration this year with Marvin Design Gallery by Eldridge. We would also like to thank our host and collaborator since 1992, the Portland Museum of Art. The PMA store also has these great 10% discount coupons, good for the month of April, so please take advantage of that. The store is now going to be open before and after the lectures, so take a minute to go up there. I did last Friday. The book selection is phenomenal. If you haven't been in there lately, just make sure you get in there and see the books. They also have our speaker's book up there. Barbara Wilk's book is available, and I believe she'll be signing the copies afterwards. So thank you, Portland Museum of Art. Thank you to our collaborator, the Greater Portland Landmarks. They have provided meeting space and ongoing support to Architox for many years. And there's another place you need to stop by if you haven't lately. They did an amazing mural installation in their lobby in their building that is the history of Greater Portland Landmarks. So on a lunch hour or sometime, you can go up the street and check that out. So thank you, Greater Portland Landmarks. And tonight's patrons who have helped make this lecture possible, we have great gratitude towards Harriman Architects and Engineers, Oak Point Associates, Office Resources and Knoll, the Press Hotel, and Thornton Tomasetti. Thank you all. And of course, without all of you sitting in the audience and all of the sponsors and donors to Architox who are listed on the back of our program, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you to everybody who continues to support this incredible organization. I also was asked to share with you that this year we have a cash bar with beer and wine for $5 after the lecture. So we hope that you will stick around, visit with each other a little bit after we hear from Barbara. So if you think you might hang around afterwards and have a drink, how about you clap? Come on. Come on, people. This is where ideas and connections happen. We're coming out of hibernation here, so let's have some fun. So now to our speaker host, Andrew Bradley.
Well, good evening, everyone. Tonight it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the evening, Barbara Wilkes. Ms. Wilkes comes to us from New York City, where she's the principal and founder of W Architecture and Landscape Architecture. In her practice, she uses these two branches of design to realign nature in the city, playing upon the tension between landscapes and structures to encourage engagement and discovery for visitors and the community. After graduating from Cornell University with her BA in architecture, Ms. Wilkes worked with the city of Baltimore, where she was influenced by its well-documented urban renaissance. During that time, she co-founded Sarah Willis, and after 20 years of award-winning projects, she went on to earn her master's in landscape architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. Throughout her career, Barbara has welcomed the collaborative relationships that have influenced this interplay between ecology and urbanism. Ms. Wilkes' work is diverse and illustrates the variety of the clients she's worked with. Some of the projects in the New York area include the award-winning West Harlem Piers Park, The Edge in Williamsburg, the Shore Parkway for the New York City Parks. And in her most recent collaboration, Ms. Wilkes has teamed with HRNA and Cooper Robertson and has been selected as a finalist in the Rebuild by Design competition, which envisions a vibrant and resilient waterfront in a post-superstorm sandy New York. Her work is also known internationally, and she has completed projects in Calgary, Toronto, Villahermosa, Mexico, Dubai, and Riyadh. Wilkes has been elected to the College of Fellows of the American Institute of Architects and to the College of Fellows of the American Society of Landscape Architects. She serves on the Design Committee of Cornell University, on the Planning Committee of the Municipal Art Society of New York City, a board member at the Pyramid Hill Sculpture Park, and is a shareholder at the Cincinnati Art Museum. Wilkes has served on the Mayor's Institute for City Design and has served on juries for various institutions, including the Urban Land Institute, the AIA, the ASLA, and she is a Design Trust Fellow and has contributed to 5 Grow Farm, which promotes urban agriculture, particularly in the 5 boroughs of New York City. She's an adjunct professor at the City College of New York. And in 2013, she released her book, Structuring Confluence, which easily you can get here at the bookstore here at the Port Museum of Art. Wilkes believes that a visitor to a place is a participant. Her design philosophy seeks to create access and participation, fostering a greater awareness of special qualities of each place by reimagining the boundaries between natural and man-made, the new and the old, land and water. So please help me welcome Barbara Wilkes.
It's really an honor to be here. I'm very impressed by the architects, 27 years. I mean, I think that's really amazing, an all-volunteer group that shows real commitment to having a dialogue about these kinds of issues. So, let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my background, which you already heard quite a bit about, but I'll go over it very briefly. And then a little bit about my philosophy, or our firm's philosophy, and then the projects, some selected projects. So, yeah, I have a multidisciplinary background. I started out my career as an architect. As he said, I went to Cornell, which is situated in this beautiful landscape, ironically, because what I was studying, on the other hand, was on the left-hand side of the page, which was very dense urban fabric. And what we learned about was making space, not objects so much, more about space and its continuity, which is shown in this Noli plan, the famous Noli plan of Rome. How the inside of the buildings flow out to the plazas of the major public buildings, and it's all part of the same system. And I think I was really taken by that, and went on to Baltimore. Actually moved there because it had such a great urban fabric. It was still intact. They were kind of so far behind that they hadn't really done much urban renewal, which was great, and had stopped most of the highways. So I had a firm there for a while, but I started to realize that with the interest in the space between the buildings as well as the buildings, that I didn't really know enough to be able to do what I thought the opportunity was. So I went back to the University of Pennsylvania, which ironically studied landscape in the middle of a pretty dense city. And that landscape, at that point, Ian McCarg was just ending his term there. And so we learned the McCarg layer cake of the landscape, which starts with the geology, the foundation of the place, and then the soils and the topography, the water, hydrology, how it all works together. Vegetation then grows, and animals finally inhabit it. But the strange thing about both of these educations that I had was, one was solely about cities where people live, and the other was really about landscape systems. Luckily, Anne Spurn was the chair also when I was at Penn, and she had just written a book called The Granite Garden. And this was the beginning of people starting to understand that the cities are gardens. They're not, and garden not meaning fabrication. I mean, everything's sort of a fabrication. So this is really the foundation of our philosophy of the firm, that nature and city are not separate entities. We might have culturally had in the past, learned that they were. We have this romantic vision of nature, some place you go to and have this great experience, versus the dirty industrial city. But that kind of cultural dichotomy, it's the same river, that's the Hudson in both pictures, the same water, the same things are happening in both places. So they're really one and the same. And as population grows, it literally is coming together. So along with that, cultural diversity and biodiversity are not mutually exclusive. I love this book. I don't know if any of you have read Manhattan by Eric Sanderson. I really recommend it. He had worked with, I forget now who actually did these wonderful illustrations, but he goes back in time to 1600 and recreates what Manhattan must have looked like back then, and the kind of ecology, he's an ecologist, the kind of ecology that must have been there. So that you see, so that kind of ecology that he's looking back at, and the cultural diversity that Manhattan has now, again, hopefully can learn to coexist. And the same way, we've also learned that new does not have to replace old. That they can be together. We don't have to start over every time that we want to think about making a new place. You guys in Portland really understand this very well. You have such a wonderful blend of new and old. Boundaries are not definite. I found these two pictures over time, and they really struck me. When we first started making cities here, I think a lot of this, and not all of these cultural ideas are American-made. We have, because of our landscape, we have a particular kind of cultural view of landscape that is a little unique to us. But anyway, so this is Savannah on the left, where you can see they're just literally carving it out of the wilderness back then. And then now, well, not now, this was an earlier picture, but Central Park is sort of containing a little piece of wilderness as the world is growing from 500 million, the first one, to 1.6 billion around 1900. and now we're about at 7.2 billion or something. So there's a lot of pressure on our Earth. The other kind of boundaries that are being erased, you mentioned I like encouraging engagement. This kind of fountain in Baltimore, these were some drawings I did. It shouldn't be like that. People want to get in the fountains, and again, now this kind of thing is more commonplace, but that's what we want to. So at every scale, that kind of thing. So connections have been broken because of these other ways of thinking in the past that we've had, and places don't change that quickly. So I feel a lot of what I do and a lot of the other architects, landscape architects here in the room is, we spend our time knitting things back together again and making new places out of them. So this is really just about the world being a totality, and sort of the first time we could see that, in the 60s, and it's a quote by an astronaut. And the idea that, it's held together by this is a mirror diagram, which shows all these little connections of people and everything. It's this sort of the butterfly wings idea. They flutter and everything can change. So connections are necessary at many scales to reestablish continuity. And in fact, we are now the agent of so many connections that we have to take this responsibility very literally. They're now thinking of renaming this era that we're in, after us, because we're having such an impact on where we live. So, structuring Confluence is celebrating this simultaneity, and I like the clapping thing. It's like having a little fun with it. How can we do all these things, but make life enjoyable, right? And have a good place to live. So, that was a very brief run through our philosophy, at least part of it, and now I'm going to go into the project. So, Tide Point, this is in Baltimore, and we always like starting to look at where it is from a really, really far away point of view, because, it's, again, this idea of simultaneity. It's on the Chesapeake Bay, it's kind of one of the biggest estuaries in the world, teeming with life, lots of green and luscious. It's also in this industrial landscape at the scale of the city in the middle of the slide. At the site scale, it's a group of 5 buildings that used to be a Procter & Gamble plant and was vacant for 5 years at the time that we started working on it. This is an after photo, but you can see the discontinuity that was happened here over time. The neighborhood in the middle, can't even get to the water anymore, except at our project you can see, right now we've made some tenuous connections here across what used to be sort of impossible to cross. But so, these are the kinds of things around the world that are being changed. In this particular case, this site, this is the Tide Point site. And right now, this is still active, industrial, and so is this is the dominant sugar. So it's one of the few sites in this area that is changing. But then now the neighborhood can get to the water. They can come down these streets. This now has a public access, public easement through what is now a corporate campus. So, which I'll show you in a minute. So at a smaller scale, the more human scale, looking at the place, how can we bring together this tidewater and the Chesapeake and this industrial abandoned landscape into a place that lets you know where you are in the world. So we sort of developed this industrial grid that floats over the land that's a little like that feeling you get from the oscillation and shifting ground of the Chesapeake. And it also forms benches and places to sit because the project is historically certified and we couldn't have anything like furniture because then it wouldn't look industrial. Here you see another view of it. The artists brought in these concrete balls and cones, and we added some of these steps to the concrete bases. And you see the real tanks in the distance. This is another view, sort of the open space and the stairs. Then we added at the edge sort of a fake pier, if you will. This part of the site actually was structured as a relieving platform and had been filled. And so we decided to express that on the surface and make it look like a pier that sort of floated in at the edge of the site. And then it has a wonderful fog feature, part of that blurring boundaries we were talking about. What we're trying to make it feel like is a lot of the stuff floated in. So again, that shifting tides, this shifting tide water that you really can't feel if you're on the water or on the land. And some of the landscape grows up between the cracks of some of these systems. There you can see the buildings in the distance. They were renovated, but that's not part of what they worked on, but other architects renovated those structures. Here's the space. You can see the borrowed landscape of the industrial tanks on the one side, and on the other side there's the Domino Sugar, and there's a lookout so you can watch it, especially nice at night when the cranes are going. Here's a tank-based garden, we call it the industrial garden, looking out over the water. And we even reused some of the foundations of buildings to hide things like parking lots that are sort of sunken into the ground so that you're not so aware of them on the landscape. We also did, these were not constructed, but it's a series of 4 new markers that could happen to mark the corners of the project, and they provided different amenities for the complex, little cafes and things. And they were, again, historically certified, so they were very modern in contrast to the existing brick buildings. And I would say that it's always important to point out that this was an economic success. You know, it became a very popular, what do they call it, when you're lots of new businesses or incubator are starting there. And in fact, one of those new businesses was Under Armour, and they have now taken it over, and it is their corporate headquarters. They recently bought the campus. So it's pretty much a pretty big success story. This is a different project. I'm mostly putting this in because it's about new and old. It's the best example I have to show you what I mean by that. You can be new and old simultaneously. It's not a city, it's a barn, an old barn on a farm outside of Baltimore. That was a before, this is an after. This is the quality of the ruined barn and the kind of light that it has. We felt talking with the owner was something that they, was what made this place special. And to be able to keep that, okay. What we did was put a box inside the barn, well, 2 boxes, really, a box of glass, and then a solid box that holds all the bathrooms and things that you need, mechanical space, to be solid. And this is what it ends up looking like. So you sort of keep the whole thing intact, and you don't have to insulate that barn wall, so you don't lose that wonderful feeling that it has when you have to put up things like insulation. So the stair that we saw comes up here between the new glass wall and the old barn wall, and it really becomes like a porch around the space. And here you're inside the space now, inside the glass, looking through the porch, but you're getting all the nice reflections from the. And then this is down below. You can see we kept all the old, it was made out of timbers. Down below on the right and on the left is the kitchen on the upper floor. And you can see this is the core. We stacked up 2x3s, just stacked them and drilled them and put rebar through it to hold them, and just wanting to have some feeling of mass without doing nothing too expensive. And on this side we took off the siding, so you can look out at the landscape. It's also, the siding was kept on the south and the west where you need it for the sun and actually get free soleil. And on the north and east, it was removed so you can see. Okay, back to the city. This is New York. West, yeah, it's way up there on the Hudson. Let's see. Here's 125th Street, which is the main street of Harlem. And then it angles to go to our site because it's in a valley, and this valley is very important to the design project. Okay, so here you see 125th Street coming in. We were actually hired by the economic development. They owned this piece of land in red, and they wanted to know what's the best thing to do with it. They had put it out for bid as a hotel and other things like that. Long story short, after we did the master plan, we went with what the community really wanted, which was a park at the edge, and also made a lot of sense because it's such a narrow site, and there's a bike trail and a continuous path all the way around Manhattan, so we had to fit that in anyway. So the master plan said there's really 3 steps to bring back this area, which was a former industrial area that had been mostly abandoned, became a car-oriented. This is where you get on the highway, so lots of gas stations, no way to get to the water again for the community. And so the steps are, first you build the park, change the identity of the area, and then you make some transportation linkages. Step 2 and step 3 is you rezone, and people will be thinking better of it, and it will start changing. And so we started on step 1, which was build a park. You can see this is the site. It was just this wide, 60 feet basically. And the community is very excited about having a way to get to water. You can also see there's absolutely no sidewalks. See how it's just wall-to-wall asphalt, way back in here. So it's not a place where people would feel comfortable walking out into. Okay, this is what it used to look like. It was a cove down here at the bottom. It was the natural way that you got into this part of town. Because it was where you could, there's really big hills up at either side of it. So we wanted to bring back that feeling of it being that kind of entry from the water, that cove. Over time, it became an industrial entry point to the water, like many of these places. So here's a historic map of the industrial. None of the piers were left, as you saw in that picture. It was just a parking lot, just a bulkhead. So the industrial piers used to go straight out from the streets. We sort of think of this as the city taking precedent over the land. The idea of the city grid coming out there. We were thinking, well, since these are new piers, they don't really have to follow that pattern anymore. Maybe we should look at water patterns coming in. It was a cove, right? Waves come in to the cove. Why don't we look at that as a way of thinking about how to make piers? So you can see they're typically, like these sandbars would be more parallel to the land. So, wow, didn't know about that fast. So this is the before, on the left after. So the idea was to sort of have a pier, looked like it floated in, or was like a sandbar, and you can see that it, besides the fact that it looks like that, it also has a relationship to 125th Street. And makes a little bit of a harbor there at the point. So here's the diagram of waves coming in, breaking the pier in the middle for 125th Street, and then some of these other streets that are on the regular grid come to special points, like the point of this triangle, which is our woodland special water feature that happens here, the access to this pier, which I'll show you in a minute. And then the other problem we had was the size of the site. It was so tight, so small, only 60 feet wide, and people had such high hopes for this being their main gathering place of the water that we thought we needed to do everything we could to make it as big as possible. So everything in yellow is underutilized roadway. And so the more we can get rid of underutilized roadway and put it back to pedestrians, the better. So that's what we did. And here's the before and after, pedestrians and bicycles. So you can see the road, used to be like right about here. So all of this would have not been possible. We would have had to build it in the park instead and made the park even smaller. So that's what it looks like, pretty well used. Here's that walkway going right out parallel to one of the streets, so you can go right out to the pier on a walkway, and you feel invited even though you're underneath this dark overhead viaduct. Using the diagonals, also because it's so narrow, it really expands the space visually. So you can see the pier going out at a diagonal. You can also see that this is where the bulkhead is. We didn't have the money to change the bulkhead. That wasn't in our budget. So we tried to make it feel like this is slipping over the land, and the pier, again, blurring these boundaries between where things stop and start. So you feel a little bit of interaction there. And then the woodland where we built up, there was also a hot spot that we had to cover with 2 feet of soil. So we built it up and made a woodland area. And again, you can see these diagonals, how they really expand the space, so you feel like you're not in a kind of narrow slot of the park. And then this, you maybe, I hope, can start to feel that this is a cove. That these are little sand dunes, and this is sort of a dune shape as well. And obviously there's places for different kinds of places to sit. This is that special feature that lines up one of the streets. They're sitting on these little dune forms. And here's someone walking along between the different places. This is the little woodland that we made as part of this. We added 150 trees in this site, and just a little plug for urban forests. They do a lot of work for everybody. It's really important to have trees. I won't read all of this, but there is a thing now called Million Trees in New York, where they're adding 1 million trees. There's 5.2 million trees right now. They want to add 1 million more trees by 2025 or so, pretty quickly. And it's actually it's hard. They're having trouble doing it that fast. Here again the bike trail in the woodland. We also like to try to limit waste and reuse materials that are on site. These are pieces that were taken out of the bulkhead when we put in the new piers, and so we reuse them as places to sit. The granite, historic granite. And then sort of a little bonus, we found, we didn't know was there underneath the asphalt, that big asphalted area, were all these Belgian logs. So we also reused those as drainage swales in the site. And we have also Hudson River pebbles in the concrete aggregate, and this is just regular concrete. It's a pretty simple project in terms of materials. This was our fanciest detail, the custom benches that we put over the concrete. Here you see it in place. But we felt strongly that there would be a variety of kinds of seating, some with backs, some for platforms, so people can use them in different ways. Can you hear me? I realize I'm not talking to the microphone. Yes. Also had some art incorporated. Can anybody guess what that comes from? Patterns. No? One of the things that always happened here, I forgot to point it out when we looked at the early slide, as fishermen, they always kept coming and fishing. And this is the little thing that you thread, the little, I don't know what the technical term is, but yeah, blown up thing, the artist Mary Ward calls them voices. So there's 3 of these on the site. They're really great. And here we are in the studio, and here you see the fishermen. It's a big thing there still. We now have a fish cleaning table. Here's the fishermen. We also have a kayak launch. And that's an overview of the park. And then what did happen in phases 2 and 3 is actually Columbia University has come in and bought up a lot of land sort of secretly. and then announced that they are going to put a new campus here. So that is under construction. And you can see our park is down that way. Renzo Piano is the architect. Okay, mentioned we worked on rebuild by design. I'm going to just stick with New York while we're here. It's not chronological. Superstorm Sandy, you all know what a shock that was. Sort of a wake-up call to New York. I mean, in other countries around the world, they've been dealing with these things for a long time, but we're a little behind. A lot of water. Our business was out for a week because of they didn't have any of the electrical substations protected. Even though where we were didn't flood, but the electricity was near the water. So this was that park I just showed you that it got flooded and actually nothing much happened. We were very proud. We hadn't used any styrofoam in our detailing that floated away like some people had. So it's really a matter of what. But so in studying this and being lucky enough to be on one of those rebuild by design teams that had selected, we learned a lot about resiliency, and it's really a lot about redundancy, actually, that you build different levels of protection at the water's edge, within the buildings and within the infrastructure itself. So it's sort of a three-part, or at least a three-part plan. And one of the areas we studied was Red Hook, Brooklyn, and that's what I'll show you. And Red Hook is actually a lot like Portland. It's when we were studying this, I actually looked up Portland and was interested because the way that you have an active waterfront as well as a place for the city to come to and for tourists, and those are many of the same goals that Red Hook had in mind. That's this historic Red Hook. It was a big maritime, and it has these two big basins, the Atlantic and the Erie Basin, that were built because the port of New York, when it used to be here, got so crowded that it needed more space. So these were built because they were so close to the tip of Manhattan, which was where all boats were originally. Now, what it's used for, there is a small container port here. This part's really kind of underutilized. There is a cruise ship terminal here, which doesn't have as nice facilities as you all do. And then there's garden activity in this area. And now there's a new IKEA store come into this. Big box on the water. So the goal was to create places for both people and industry while you're putting up this flood protection that's going to come up 5 or 6 feet from where you are. This area got 5 or 6 feet of water in Superstorm Sandy. So again, we looked at different cities, Portland being one of them, and San Diego has a new cruise ship terminal that is very good. Baltimore, looked at Baltimore. Let's see, that was a scale comparison. The plan that we came up with acknowledges that there are many different kinds of functions and uses around this. And it has a lot of edge, as you can see. It was a hook, right? So there, I didn't show you. I didn't bring that. Oops. Sorry. Good point. Okay. It's called a red hook. Right here is it basically all was a swamp. There was a little piece of higher ground right here, which is what they called the hook. And so all of this was filled. And that's why it's covered with 5 feet of water in Superstorm Sandy. It's very low lying. It's also not connected in very well with any subways. The closest subway is way over here. And it's cut off by the highway. This is the BQE, which is why IKEA is now right there, because it's close to the BQE. So the issue was how to help Red Hook, economically, while putting in this massive infrastructure project. Use that money for the good of the whole. So we came up with a series of projects. The market was an idea. The cruise ship terminal is only used, I can forget the exact 50 days of the year, if even. And so that parking lot is closed, so could it be used for temporary market space? Could people actually get in it. Right now, it's not open to the public. The harbor was an idea for a recreational harbor that actually came from looking at your harbor, because Red Hook has a lot of the working harbor, but it didn't have any recreational harbor. So was there an opportunity there to bring that in? Since we have to build protection, we'd be building in a protected harbor. So that might work. And then leave this as a working harbor, but perhaps get a walkway around the edge of it that looks out. There's a fantastic view to the Statue of Liberty, and then sort of a maker's district where it can connect. Again, improving all these connections. These are the main. It doesn't have a commercial street like you all. It has one, but it's not at the water's edge. It's more inland. That's the main commercial street, and this is the secondary one. And they don't really connect into the rest of the world, so we're suggesting they try that. So the existing access to the water proposed, again, we're trying to increase access to the water for pedestrians and visitors and people that live there, but not exclude, but not preclude industrial and other maritime access. So mixing those two together in a way that work. I'll go through these quickly. This is basically, so here's what it looked like, or still looks like. It's all vehicular. People just drive up, get dropped off, and come back. It's much bigger than this. Isn't there room to put a slightly raised promenade for people that could be used, especially when there's no boats, but maybe there's a way to even control access when there is a boat. And then this would protect you from all the what they call nuisance events, the ones that might happen every 10 years or something, because it's up, say, 3 feet. But when it gets another sandy, oh no, I don't have a picture. These things, you put in you put in some flood walls, temporary, so that you do block off the harbor then, and you can't use it anyway because another sandy is coming. But the rest of the time it's open. So that's the trick of how do you sort of blend different kinds of flood protection in a way that keeps the visual aspects open. Okay, so the harbor, how did we work there? The goal was to let all of this remain as historic piers and places for boats to come in without raising it up 6 feet, which would preclude that, and instead raise it up. I'm sorry this got cut off a little bit, but this curves all the way around, and this is up high enough that it blocks the water, and it terraces down so that there's a place to sit, a place to look in, a recreational harbor, but leaving all the historic part intact. The basin is the Erie Basin, which is a working waterfront, but this was a car park. This is just where the city takes their, people that get towed away, end up here, having the most beautiful view of the Statue of Liberty. So that didn't seem like the highest and best use. So we said, well, we're not going to do housing because that would interfere with the working waterfront here, or potentially. So could this be, these kind of multi-purpose buildings that might be offices, might be baker places, things like this. It's a little bit like we have a thing called the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which has been changed over to industrial use. And then build the flood protection out here where the people can walk and look out at the harbor. But they can't get down here where there's service roads and barges and other things. So this really just shows, actually I showed you one of our schemes. We also looked at just a few protected inland, you would build up, so you protect this, or you could build around the whole edge and protect all of it. They all have different costs and benefits, and there's a very complicated formula. Right now this is actually going out to be a real project. We're on one of the finalist teams that they're talking to, and we're hoping. So this is the process you go through. FEMA has these rules that you have to cost-benefit analysis that you go through, and they decide which one to build. And they don't count community benefit as one of the things. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see, no matter who wins, how the goal is to get that community benefit anyway, even though FEMA doesn't count it. So how can we make these things work? Okay, Williamsburg, this is on the East River in Brooklyn. There was a, there was a rezoning, of this whole edge. That again, it was vacant industrial properties, and the rezoning required, allowed developers to build very tall, up to 40-story. It was more complicated, but the highest would be 40, 20 stories, variety of sizes of buildings. But they also had to build the public infrastructure for public access to the waterfront in return. So this is what it looked like. You can see that's fantastic views across to Manhattan. And so this is our, sorry, it's a little washed out. But there's a grid of Williamsburg here that I can see on my screen, but it looks like it's mostly gone. But so we have 3 streets, 1, 2, 3. These are 2 blocks. They're very deep blocks, which are the industrial blocks. And there's the subway. So what we're trying to show here is this is the main street, the one in the middle, that people come down to get to the site, and then you can look out and see all these different things. Okay, so here's our site plan, and the reason these, like this, is at such a crazy angle, is so it actually really focuses you on the Empire State Building. But what we're also hoping, and sort of a development of some of the ideas I talked to you about that we developed in Harlem, was that the East River is a very violent, it's actually not a river at all, it's a strait that goes between the Hudson River and the Sound of Long Island. So it's swishing back and forth, many times a day. And so it's pretty violent waters, and so we were hoping that it looked like this pier really kind of crashed up into the land, and it just sort of happens to focus you at the same time on the Empire State Building. So here's the first phase that was built. They're building the second phase now. It's under construction, which is right over here. But so it's part of the pier. The rest of it's in. They have to build a certain proportion of public space equal to the amount of housing that they're building. So they didn't have to build the rest of the pier until they built the next building. Anyway, so this was the street that we closed and pedestrianized, and also, it's letting in, it's good for the water, it lets it soak in, there's more permeable area, then this used to all be paved, just like Harlem. This street we also closed. Here we have a big bioswale, which you can't really see. So here is the end of the pier as it kind of lands upland. You can see it'll be longer eventually, but focused on the Empire State Building. And then there's a sort of series of spaces that terrace down into the water, and actually this is built over a parking garage. Hopefully you can't tell. There's another view. We cut off the Empire State Building right there. Oh, here you see the section. It's just one level parking. And you can see we put most of the trees out here where there's real land, and then a few here we have this one major planter, but the lawn space is over the parking garage. These are just some of the views right at the water's edge. It's a riprap edge, more natural. We got to rebuild the edge here, and this is rather the most inexpensive kind you can do. Oh, and the other fun thing about keeping things, while they were doing the foundations for the building, this huge rock was underground where they were digging. It's a glacial erratic. I don't think it got brought down from Maine, but probably from the Palisades or something. And usually they would just smash it up and take it away. But I said, no, let's keep that because it's really cool. It's pretty big. So there it is now, sitting at when you come in. Most people probably don't know what it is, but we were happy that it didn't get turned into dust. Okay, the zoning, here it is. So we're here, and you can see the land that was zoned for public use and the kind of things that were allowed to be built. These were sort of typical zoning diagrams. And that's what's actually built on the site. Well, this is the one they're building right now. No. Oh, this is the wrong. No, that's it. Yeah, that's the one they're building right now. Okay. All right, this is a bunch of research. After we started doing these waterfront projects, and also the recession started, we had a little more time. So we started realizing, this isn't just a project-specific thing, that actually this could be thought about as a system. That these street ends, like the ones I showed you that we pedestrianized, and at the edge, there's a lot of them in New York, and maybe just as we've had boulevards or other kinds of streets, maybe there's a marine street. We could invent something called a marine street that people could say, our communities could say, I'd like to do this part of the marine street, and it'd be easier to get approvals and all that because it would exist as a type. So the idea is it would help mitigate runoff. I don't know if you all have combined sewers here, but in New York, yes, you do. Okay, so you're familiar with the problem. So it would help mitigate street runoff as well as storm surges coming in from the water side. So this explains the problem with to have a lot of rain, you end up getting sewage in the water because it goes in the outfall instead of doing what it's supposed to do that way. And then the surges coming in, we're going to try to. So here's a before and after of the idea. This is what these streets look like. The one that we changed into that green, place that I showed you earlier. It looked just like this. But it could look like this. It could actually even be a way to go down into the water, take it one step further. Let that be a place where you can launch a kayak, kind of be a wetland. Maybe as we've started even another idea, which I'll show you in a minute, start using the dredge that they have taken out of the harbor continuously because boats and have more wetlands. We did some research, and this is the decline of wetlands, and this is, we're saying if you started putting some back with the dredge, maybe we could get up almost to where we were at one point. So actually this we did as part of an exhibit, I guess it was to celebrate Hudson coming up the Hudson, and we did it with, there was a thing called Glimpses 2040 with Amsterdam firm. So we were assigned to think about recreation and how could recreation be thought of, and a glimpse into recreation in 2040. So it was this idea of using the dredge, creating safe harbors up the Hudson, which right now is very, very wide. So if you build these little islands on the edges every so often, it would make it a lot easier for boats to have little boats, little human-powered boats, not to get lost way out there on the Hudson where a storm can come up rather quickly. And you can make their way all the way up to Troy eventually, because Troy is actually, the tide goes up all that far from the Hudson. It's tidal all the way to Troy. So that was the idea of this. And this was our big rendering of it for the exhibit. So you make these places for people to stop, and then they can paddle on further, get to the next group of little islands, paddle on further, and eventually you see the dredge thing dumping the lake. Okay, another project that we did in New York on natural selection was about this whole bay system, which actually is where Sandy, the geometry of this is what made Sandy so bad, it funneled in to that small area. But this is Jamaica Bay, which is a lot of this is a national gateway park, but it's not very unified at the moment. So our idea was to, they wanted you to look at this area, which is part of the Jamaica Bay in more detail, to again make that back into more of a wetland. It was the first airport. And meanwhile, try to make some kind of walkway all the way around place, and then you'd have to have some boats to connect the big opening. So reorienting relationships so that people understand it differently would eventually lead to increased teaching and overnight stay. That's the short one of the. So and the sort of juxtaposition then of these old airplanes, which they have, and right now this is just all filled with lawn. You see big airplanes sitting out on the lawn. It's not very exciting. This is what the kind of environment you're really in. So why not express that, understand it, and sort of get the two stories again, the simultaneity together. So that's the picture. Here's the old airport. Here's this is all cut in new, and there's a problem in Jamaica Bay that it doesn't flush enough anymore because they closed off. This was filled. I mean, they closed this all off, so it would help. So I guess I'm continuing with this story. I mean, we do other projects, but the story of thinking about how to reuse, not just the bricks or something you might find, but bigger things like dredge. And so in Dubai, this was a while ago, so it's here, that's where we're looking. This is the city of Dubai. You can see all the fun things that they're building. They're really into doing things with dredge. It's not odd here. And we had this project we worked with some architects that were designing a bridge, and which went across here. And we said, and they wanted, I think Zaha was doing an opera house here. And so they had this idea, maybe we should dip down so you can see the opera house. And we said, yeah, that'd be great. We could make an island when you dip down and people could go out. And back here is a wildlife preserve, so we could sort of make this be the gateway to the wildlife preserve, and also use the dredge and kind of all work together. So here you see it. That was the island where she was going to build her opera house. This is our new island. The bridge, that's the wildlife preserve, and this creek. This is called the Dubai Creek. And this is about how we decided, it's not every day to design land. So it was fun thinking about, we'll put about access of that existing one, but then we'll spin it a little, and we'll also shift it with the bridge access, and then we'll let the water come in to the inside, because the outside it has to stay hard to keep the channels. These are pretty narrow shipping channels. So it was this fun idea of letting the inside kind of make these new, really turn into whatever forms they wanted, and then you'd be out there in this place that you don't get to experience very much in Dubai because it's very urbanized, and could, in a way, this big water body, as it builds up over time, can become a little bit like their Central Park and have some of these nice places in it. Then the recession hit, and who knows what happened. So they liked it at the time. But, so now I'm going on to another island. This time it's in Calgary. This one existed. We don't get to make it. But the idea of this island, and here you see the context of where we are. There's the mountains. Here's Calgary. Here's looking closer at the island. This is downtown. And the idea here, so this area right here, see how there doesn't look like much is going on? Called it was a rail yard, and so this is an area that a quasi-public called the Calgary Municipal Light Corporation is redeveloping into a new neighborhood, and they wanted this new park on this island to be the draw for attracting new people to come to live in downtown Calgary. So here it is. This is the island. Here's the area that is under development. This is a park. This is for Calgary, where Calgary started. That's will remain open. But this island, and you see the mountains. I love this picture. Here's a view from the island to where they're redeveloping. So it's one has already attracted over $1 billion. Many of the sites are underway now. And this park's going to open this summer. I can't show you finished pictures yet, but so We started with a bio blitz, where you go out and see what is the condition of the island. What the condition, as far as people who lived in Calgary thought of it, either they didn't know it existed at all, or they thought of it as a place where illicit activities happened. Let's say it was off the beaten path. And there was a path that was mostly used for bicycles. I think if you went through on a bicycle, you felt like you were safe, but people didn't walk on these paths. So we're out there with a big group of scientists as our ecologists. These are scientists from nearby universities, and then there's a lot of just, anybody that wanted to show up just to see what we found on the island. So we did a baseline ecology. People think of it as being natural and beautiful. Actually, it was very degraded. There's a lot of lawn, which is, like a desert as far as ecology is concerned. There were these wonderful poplars, which are really beautiful, especially like you see them here in the fall. It's really one of the only trees that will grow in Calgary. It's such a really harsh environment. So that was good, but a lot of understory was gone, and the rest of the forest that would have, or not forest, but the willows and other things that would be in the river, there weren't a whole lot of. Here was the map. The only part that was nice was right here. It's nice ecologically. The rest, the peak means, okay, this is just lawn, so not great at all, really bad. So we also looked back at the history, and we found that actually this place had been filled and flattened and armored at the edge. So it almost wasn't an island anymore. It was just a piece of land stuck out there in the river. And it used to really be 3 islands that had streams, going across it. So that's what we thought, well, that's a good idea. People can get back into the river. You make a little bit more of a protected crossing here, water. And then this is going to be more of a wetland. So you don't really get in it. That would be a place that would attract different kinds of animals that aren't there now. And then you have, soil that you took out of those, so then you make a hill. So that's, and you put the hill where there's this really bad spot of nothing happening. So this is our plan. So we've increased interaction, engagement with the water. Actually, the city had done a whole master plan saying to find out what people wanted, and there were little drawings by kids saying toes in the water and stuff like that. So this is that opportunity. Then we tried to keep certain areas not disturbed so that you could have an ecological opportunity. But this big hill is a place for events and concerts and smallish concerts or movies, things like that. And this gateway on this side is, again, sort of a smallish festival area where all the parking existed. And the zoo's right here. So it's a place where people are going to come from. This is just a blow up, just to show you one of the places that we're making these new crossings. We believe a lot in having loops so that people can circulate easily. This is what it looked like. It's sort of during construction, but they haven't really excavated this yet. But you see, there are these wonderful views, again, back to the city that are kind of obscured in the summertime with all the trees. So this is what we proposed. That would become the place where you could skate in the winter, or in the summer, get down and actually get in the water in a safe way. It's very rocky there, all the lands. And then the new hill, which is now exists, unfortunately not in this photo, but this is where we put it, where it was already an integrated place. Be a sledding hill as well. And then the area next to the zoo, where you could enter sort of a park entry, which would look something like this. The parking is hidden back here. There's a big bioswale that collects all the water from that and cleanses it before it goes into the Bow. This is the Bow River. It's actually the one that comes down from Lake Louise, and it's really pretty pristine water, although it's dammed in many places. And then we tried really hard to keep the big trees and really formed the whole thing around them, so we didn't have to keep their grades. The building, it's not so important except for I wanted just to show you again this reuse. There had been a pedestrian bridge that went over to the island, so we reused the materials. It's going to be covered up all the way. Here it is, and worked with the wood to get it trimmed and put it up on the building. That was fun. Okay, and this is the last project. This is something that's happening now in St. Petersburg, Florida. They had a competition. In fact, they had one a couple of years ago, which Michael Malton won. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. And then they ended up throwing that out because they finally realized when they got to construction documents that they weren't going to be able to afford maybe a fourth of the plan. And, they felt sort of cheated and they got so mad at it that they kicked them off the project and started over. So this competition was very strict, but you had $33 million, that's it. And we only draw what you can build for the budget. And they had all kinds of technical reviewers to make sure that they vouched that yes, their project could actually be built. So St. Petersburg is on Tampa Bay. Here's this side is the Gulf. And it has this great history. I don't know how many of you have been there, but back around the turn of the century, in the 1900s, that century, there was a big referendum and a big argument about, should this be industrial or should this be for the people? And so back then in Petersburg, they decided to make it be parkland. And so they have all this parkland all around the edge of their town that has been that way since the early 1900s. And then they added these things over time, and this was the question mark, the area that we were asked to work on. So this was a little timeline of, over time, this pier has actually changed places. It was a railroad pier, it was a boat pier, it was a $1 million pier, it was this inverted pyramid pier. The theme was it kept having to be rebuilt and reinvented. At least that's how we looked at it. Like, now you have $33 million, which is not going to build you this whole pier and put a building on it. It's impossible. So we wrote the rules and decided to tell them that that shouldn't be what they should do if they only have $33 million. What they should do is, this is also very far away out here. This is where the inverted pyramid was. That, you need to build something for people to do. This is parking lots right now. You're not going to go through parking lots to get all the way out to this. So we built a landscape. Here's their historic landscape. We said you did the same thing. Back in the turn of the century, you decided to go for parkland, build the infrastructure. Now they have a beautiful, this is an older picture, but they have a whole, rows and rows of restaurants and stuff that line this and look out on it. It's nice. So here you are. It's really about the uplands, relationship of the uplands where these women are sitting to the pier. It's not just about the pier. So that was our story. Here's what they had. You can see lots of parking lots, some sort of mooring lawn that really nothing happens on, more parking, this is all parking. And then they have a big, huge road, that goes out to the inverted pyramid. You guys are laughing, but it's not. The other thing they did, though, on the other hand, is they're the only county in Florida that has made it be a preserve. They've made their county, all the waters, they claim them as a preserve. So they're really into trying to preserve their waters, and they've got all these places where they're doing that. So it seemed like, and they have beautiful things like this. Half an hour away from downtown, this is what Florida used to look like. So we said, okay, I think we need a lagoon right here too, so that people can experience Florida. And you have these marinas that are really polluted. This would help flush them. And then you can build this pier, but we're not really going to give you a building at the end. It'll just be a great experience about being out on the bay. And it'll be pedestrian. You won't have to take your cars out there and have all that expensive infrastructure built for cars. So this was our scheme. And this was the thing at the end, which was as far as we got to making something happen out there, sort of a lawn. Well, you'll see in a minute. So we took the historic pier and we left the old pilings, you know, we're actually building reefs around them to make better fish habitat. You know, peeling up the old pier, having to restructure though, it wasn't in good shape. You had to restructure a new pier. Peeling up the land. It all fits in the existing footprint, which really just says it's permeable. And the other thing we did, that's where it was, we're sort of moving it back. You know, instead of it starting here, it's again, this is how we've been sliding our piers always back so they seem to start further inland. Doing the same thing here, so that you actually feel like you start the pier at this point, and you don't feel like you have to go way out here to this parking lot to get there. And then we're giving you more activities, not just one big one at the end. Lots of other activities. The restaurants and things would all be in here, where they can be more easily serviced on the land. So this is about the lagoons. I'm going to take you a walk around the lagoons. This is the end of the pier. It's broken across this. You just kind of go down, kayak. You can go around, and this kind of not meant to be an urban. There was a narrow lagoon and a wide one. I'm thinking really abbreviated. This is the wider one, which has the bigger, more urban space around it, which you can have food trucks and things come. There's space to build over here. That's the feature at the end. So this is the more narrow one, but there's also the piece of beach, and that part is a little more of a natural environment. This is the one restaurant that we built. It's pretty small, but within the 33 million. So we have a rooftop area, some air conditioning, which is very important to them, and you can look back at the city. And then the pier itself, okay, this is where we took off parts of the pier, so you really feel, like you're going out onto the water now. And the birds love to do this there. And there's a splash pond, for kids. Places you can look in and look at the new, the reefs that were being built there. Actually, when we were there, I was walking around looking inside, I saw a hammerhead shark just looking down. This is cool. Some shade. Shade's really important. Places for your boats. And then this was our feature at the end. So it's a place where there could be performances, but also if you're just sitting there, the idea was to have, really play at the water. We call this Blue Pier. So you could see what's happening underwater, also shown on the ceiling there. And the fishermen then went down these steps and out that way to the end. And there's public presentations. And now, long shot or not, we were seen as the rule breakers, and some people didn't like that, but they've actually now started all these websites and petitions about, Blue Pier, people who we don't even know. It's really the first time that's ever happened to me. So this is my team. And if I want to leave you with something, I want you to, think about your part in this kind of web of connections, and that your choices matter. Go out there and, make these connections, and all together we'll create a more vital, sustainable world. So thank you very much. That's what they call it. It's from the 70s, it's one of those realist buildings, and I guess, actually it's a pretty cool shape. It's a big inverted pyramid, and we first looked at trying to save it, because we on our floor of that, but it's closed right now. As you saw from all those different piers that they keep rebuilding, it's hard to sustain kind of development way out there at the end of the pier. So, you know, the brief called for it to be a restaurant, an event space, things like that. Things that need lots of servicing and lots of people to be able to get there by car, you know. So that's what they wanted it to be. Did that answer your question?
Actually, I was wondering, a lot of these projects, and it's particularly the one at the waterfront project in New York City, Redmond, do you have sort of like these path to resiliency ideas now that you've gone through all these projects like that? Is there sort of like a, if you bring something to a project that you have to use these sort of resilient attitudes?
Well, one of the things, like I said, you know, I didn't bring up all the details, but for instance, at the Blue Pier, because we're digging out the lagoons, I mean, that area, if you're building a building, it's not up high enough. So, you know, we're using it to fill other parts of the site so that the sites that we did set aside for buildings would be at the proper elevation. So, yeah, so I mean, you know, I've learned about things like that and make sure that that's built into the project. And we also did tilt up the pier, the new pier, the Blue Pier, for instance, so that if you did want to build a small building on it, it would be above flood elevation too. Any other questions? Yeah?
Is there a project that you would love to build in Portland or suggest for Portland?
Sure. I mean, you know, I guess I don't. I love your waterfront. I think it's a beautiful place, and I love all the historic buildings, and I think you have a wonderful. I'd love to, of course, I'd love to build a project here. I know I can't say what it would be. You'd have to tell me that. What do you mean? Yes.
You start as an architect and you design a building. There's a process that architects go through for designing, but designing the landscape, particularly at the scale that you are designing, can you speak to how you attack something of such large scale from a design problem?
Actually, yeah, it's interesting. I've always liked working at different scales, and I guess looking back, attributed a little bit to my Cornell training, because I just had that thinking of the whole city. But actually, the interesting thing to me between the two is that when you do a building, they're much more particular about giving you a program. When you do a park, they usually say, "We need a park," you know? And they haven't really thought about. Maybe, you know, maybe they have a little bit of an idea that they might want a playground in it or something, but it's usually not as determined. And not that buildings are, you know, we can do things with the corridor, you know, there's things you can do, obviously, in your building to be very different, but it's just interesting that I think the idea of the programming is built into the landscape profession as part of the project, where it isn't so much for the architects. So that's one difference. And I guess the other thing is, yeah, it's just a lot longer to build landscape projects in general because of all the permitting, especially waterfronts, because of all the permitting and everything. So be patient. But I think the thinking process is similar.
How does this, what's your staff, how does it break down between landscape and architecture?
It's pretty equal, and we also have, you know, now there are places doing dual degree people, like has a sort of a dual degree program, so we also are attracting those. But we don't let the architects just work in the buildings, and then, you know, we sort of get to work on whatever. It's not